Be me. Oliver, 28, middle school history teacher. Spend my days explaining the Industrial Revolution to kids who eat hot Takis for breakfast. 6 months ago, I did the big thing. Asked my girlfriend Miranda to move in with me. She is 27, works as a pediatric dental hygienist. She owns a terrifying amount of throw blankets. My living room couch is currently suffocating under knit wool. There is a basket just for decorative pillows. I don't know what they do, but I am trying to be a good partner. We live in a house I bought 8 months ago. It is a 3-bedroom fixer-upper, which is a real estate term for everything is slightly broken but not enough to sue anyone. I was proud of it. I had a lawnmower. I had a drawer full of takeout menus and dead double of batteries. I felt like a man. Then Miranda dropped the news. We were unpacking boxes of Tupperware. She was unwrapping a ceramic bowl. She said her longtime friend from her old yoga studio moved to town. Said he would probably start stopping by more often. I braced myself. Every guy knows the primal fear of the male best friend. I prepared for the usual battle tactics. Inside jokes I wouldn't get. Uncomfortably long hugs in my own hallway. Subtle digs about my teacher salary. I was ready to defend my territory. I was going to be the cool boyfriend, the unbothered boyfriend. I was not ready for Timothy. Timothy is not trying to sleep with my girlfriend. Timothy is trying to outfunction me as a human being. He is 29. He is a physical therapist. He is fit in the way that implies routine rather than obsession. He doesn't have huge veins popping out of his neck. He just stands up from a chair without making a noise. I make a noise every time I stand up. It sounds like a dry branch snapping in the woods. He carries himself with this calm competence. It makes you suddenly aware of how many things in your own life are slightly crooked. The war began on a Tuesday. Miranda invited Timothy over for dinner. I decided to cook. I made baked ziti. It is the only thing I know how to make that requires an oven. I wore a slightly stained gray hoodie. Timothy showed up wearing a Henley shirt that fit perfectly. He brought a bottle of wine that had a real cork, not a twist-off. We were standing in the kitchen. The ziti was bubbling in a glass casserole dish. I opened the cabinet under the sink to grab a plastic trash bag. The left hinge squeaked. It has squeaked since I bought the house. It is a high-pitched scratching sound. It is not loud. It is not urgent. It is my squeak. Timothy stopped talking mid-sentence. He tilted his head. He listened, like a dog hearing a whistle. Hinge is dry, he said. Yeah, I replied. I tried to sound casual. Old house, man. I will spray it this weekend. Timothy looked at me. He was not angry. He was not smug. He was just disappointed. WD-40 is a solvent, he said gently. It is a short-term fix. You want lithium grease. I stared at him. I did not know what lithium grease was. I thought lithium was for batteries. Before I could respond, he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small black multi-tool. He did not do it theatrically. It was like muscle memory. He knelt down on my linoleum floor. He tightened 2 screws I didn't know were loose. He applied a tiny amount of grease from a little tube on his keychain. He swung the cabinet door. Silence. Absolute crushing silence. Got ya, man, he said. He stood up and took a sip of his wine. Miranda smiled. She touched his arm. Oh my God, thank you, she said. That noise drove me crazy. I stood there holding a crumpled plastic trash bag, realizing a man had entered my house and improved it without asking. I served the ziti. I ate in silence. I chewed my pasta feeling like a guest in my own dining room. It escalated from there. Over the next month, Timothy did not flirt with Miranda. He flirted with my infrastructure. I came home one Friday afternoon. I was exhausted. I had just survived parent-teacher conferences. I had to explain to 3 different mothers why their sons thought the Cold War was fought in Antarctica. I pulled my Ford Focus into the driveway. I walked through the side door into the garage. I stopped. My garage was different. It was cleaner. It was not sterile, but it looked intentional. The concrete floor had been swept. There were no leaves in the corners. A basic wooden shelving unit stood where my pile of empty Amazon boxes used to live. Timothy was standing by my workbench. He was wiping his hands with a blue shop rag. He looked like a guy in a truck commercial. Miranda let me in, he said casually. I had some spare lumber in my truck. Thought I would help out. I looked at the wall. My tools were hung neatly on a pegboard. They were not labeled. They were not outlined in Sharpie. They were just placed there with unsettling natural flow. Hammers with hammers. Screwdrivers in a row. It was beautiful. It made me sick. It is easier to find stuff now, he said. He walked over to my own fridge. The garage fridge that hums too loud. He opened it and handed me a beer. Weekend is yours, he said. He He patted me on the shoulder and walked into the house to say hi to Miranda. I stood alone in the clean garage. I drank the beer in silence, feeling like a caveman who had just discovered electricity. I knew I could not complain to Miranda. If I complained, I would sound insanely insecure. Babe, your friend is too helpful. He is sweeping my floors and fixing my doors. Make him stop. I would sound like a crazy person. So I went to work the next Monday. I sat in the teacher's lounge. I was staring at a lukewarm cup of coffee. My coworker Patrick sat down across from me. Patrick is the 8th grade gym teacher. Patrick wears wind pants to faculty meetings. Patrick considers himself an alpha male because he yells at children playing dodgeball. You look like garbage, Oliver, he said. I rubbed my eyes. My girlfriend has a male best friend, I said. Patrick scoffed. Classic mistake, bro. You let another rooster in the hen house. He's not trying to steal her, I said. I explained the garage. I explained the cabinet hinge. Patrick leaned forward. He rested his elbows on the plastic cafeteria table. That is worse, he whispered. He is cucking you on a domestic level. He is showing her he can provide a better shelter. It is biological warfare. I told Patrick to shut up, but the seed was planted. I needed to assert dominance. I needed to fix something before Timothy could. I remembered the wooden gate in my backyard. The latch was rusted. The wood was splitting. I would fix the gate. I would build a new gate. I finished my coffee and stood up. I went to the school maintenance closet. The door was unlocked. The head custodian was at lunch. I saw a heavy-duty yellow impact drill on the shelf. I grabbed it. I shoved it into my canvas tote bag under some graded history essays. I walked briskly down the hallway. Hey, Mr. Fairfax. I froze. It was Kathleen. Kathleen is the front office secretary. Kathleen has worked at the school for 40 years. Kathleen knows everything. Kathleen was holding a stack of pink hall passes. What is in the bag, Oliver? She asked. Just some essays, Kathleen. Your bag is vibrating, she said. The drill was leaning against the trigger. I reached in and shifted it. It stopped. You know you have to fill out Form 8B for off-campus equipment transfer, right? I stared at her. I sweat through my blue button-down shirt. I don't have equipment, I lied. Kathleen just looked at me over her reading glasses. My office tomorrow morning, she said. I nodded and fled to my car. I drove to the hardware store. I was running on pure adrenaline and defensive insecurity. I walked into the lumber aisle. I had no idea what I was looking for. I needed wood. I needed hinges. I grabbed a shopping cart that had a wobbly front wheel. It kept pulling me to the left. I was wrestling the cart past the garden section when I saw him, Timothy. He was wearing a gray fleece jacket. He was helping an elderly woman load 3 bags of potting soil into her cart. He was smiling. She was patting his arm. I panicked. I shoved my cart behind a display of snow shovels. I crouched down. I was hiding from my girlfriend's friend in a Home Depot. I waited 10 minutes until he left the store. I grabbed 4 random pieces of wood. I grabbed a box of screws. I went to the self-checkout and left. I got home. Miranda was at work. I went to the backyard. I dragged the school drill out of my bag. I lined up the new wood against the old gate. I pulled the trigger. The drill was too powerful. The screw immediately stripped. I tried another one. It went in sideways and split the wood down the middle. I swore loudly. I tried to pull the old rusted latch off. I yanked on it. The entire rusted bracket snapped off, cutting my thumb. I stood in the mud holding a broken piece of metal. My thumb was bleeding. The gate was now completely unattached. It was just leaning against the fence. I went inside and wrapped a paper towel around my hand. I left the pieces of wood in the grass. The next morning, I had to go to the front office. Kathleen was sitting at her desk. She handed me a clipboard. It had 3 pages of carbon copy paper. Mr. Fairfax, the vice principal wants a written statement about the drill. I sat in a plastic chair meant for misbehaving 12-year-olds. I filled out the paperwork. I had to check a box that said, unauthorized removal of district property. I felt like a criminal. I handed the clipboard back to Kathleen. She sighed. Just put the drill back, Oliver, she said. I will, I mumbled. I went home that afternoon feeling defeated. I pulled into my driveway. There was a white pickup truck parked there. It was my dad's truck. My dad is named Edgar. He is a retired contractor. He wears jeans with paint stains on them to weddings. He drove up from 2 hours away for a surprise visit. I walked into the backyard. My dad was standing by the fence. He was holding a mug of coffee. The gate was perfectly fixed. It had new hinges. The wood was seamless. Hey kiddo, my dad said. I see you finally got someone who knows what they are doing to fix this. I stared at the gate. Timothy walked out of my back door. He was holding my dad's other mug, the one with the faded sports logo. Oliver, Timothy said, smiling. Your dad came by. We got to talking about deck sealants. Noticed the gate was down. We took care of it. My dad slapped Timothy on the back. This kid is all right, Oliver, my dad said. He knows his way around a circular saw. Not like you when you tried to build that birdhouse in high school. My dad laughed. Timothy chuckled politely. I wanted to lay down in the dirt and die. I walked inside. Miranda was in the kitchen chopping onions. She kissed my cheek. Isn't it great, she said. Your dad loves Timothy. They have been out there for 2 hours. I nodded. I took my paper towel off my thumb. I threw it in the squeakless trash cabinet. The final blow came from my cast iron skillet. I had spent years seasoning that skillet. I bought it at a thrift store when I was in college. I cooked 1,000 terrible meals in it. It wasn't pretty. It was black and crusty on the edges, but it worked. It was earned. It was a record of my adult life. That Friday night, Timothy came over for drinks. It started raining heavily. The roads flooded near his apartment. Miranda told him to crash on our guest bed. I said, of course, man, no problem. I woke up the next morning. I smelled heat and smoke. I walked into the kitchen wearing sweatpants and socks. Timothy was standing by the stove. He was wearing Miranda's floral apron. The oven was on high. My kitchen smelled like burning oil. I rubbed my eyes. What are you doing? I asked. Timothy turned around. He held a spatula. Morning, man, he said calmly. I noticed the seasoning on your cast iron was uneven. It was flaking in the center. I stopped breathing. You, what? I asked. I stripped it, he said. Took it down to the raw iron. Re-seasoned it properly in the oven. It needed a reset. I walked over to the stove. My skillet was sitting on the burner. It looked brand new. It was perfectly smooth. All my history was gone. All my burnt grilled cheeses. All my late-night steaks, erased by a man in a floral apron. He cracked an egg into the pan. He did not use butter. He did not use oil. He just let it hit the bare metal. He tilted the pan. He slid the egg across the surface. It didn't stick. It glided like a hockey puck on fresh ice. He flipped it effortlessly. He slid it onto a white ceramic plate. He handed me the plate. I took a fork from the drawer. I ate the egg. It was perfect. The edges were crispy. The yolk was warm. I hated him. I hated him with every fiber of my being. I knew complaining would make me sound insane. Babe, he fixed my pan. It sounds so stupid out loud. I had to retreat. I had to rethink my strategy. I decided I could not beat him in my own house. My house was compromised. I had to attack him on his own turf. The next week, Timothy invited Miranda and me over to his place for dinner. He lived in a condo downtown. I wore my best button-down shirt. I ironed it. I did a terrible job ironing it. There was a crease running straight down the collar. Miranda told me I looked handsome anyway. We drove to his condo. We walked inside. It was flawless. It smelled like cedar and clean linen. There were no shoes by the door. There was a shoe rack that actually held shoes. He had plants, living green plants that did not have brown, crispy edges. He made us braised short ribs. The meat fell off the bone. We sat at his dining table. He poured wine. We talked about Miranda's job at the dental clinic. We talked about my job at the school. Timothy asked genuinely interested questions about the 8th grade curriculum. I wanted to punch him in his perfectly structured jaw. I excused myself to use the bathroom. I locked the door behind me. I leaned against the sink. I looked around the bathroom. I was searching for a flaw, anything. A speck of mold in the grout, a crooked towel bar, a dusty baseboard. Nothing. It was like a showroom. I used the toilet. I flushed it. The water swirled down quietly, but then I heard it. A hiss. A faint, continuous hiss of running water. It lingered. I stopped washing my hands. I listened. The flapper valve wasn't sealing correctly. It was a tiny leak. A micro leak. This was my moment. I would fix his toilet. I would emerge from the bathroom and casually mention how I adjusted his fill valve. I would assert dominance. I took the heavy ceramic lid off the toilet tank. I set it on the closed lid of the toilet seat. I rolled up my sleeves. I reached my bare hands into the cold tank water. I found the rubber flapper. I jiggled the metal chain attached to it. It was caught on the plastic lever. I pulled it slightly to untangle it. The chain was old. It resisted. I pulled harder. I am not a strong man, but I was fueled by pure petty jealousy. Snap. The metal chain broke in half. I gasped. I reached down to grab the broken piece. My elbow bumped the plastic fill valve tower. It was brittle. It cracked right at the base. A jet of high-pressure water shot straight up into the air. It hit the ceiling. It sprayed across the vanity mirror. Water erupted from the tank like a geyser. I panicked. I shoved my hands over the crack. Water sprayed between my fingers. It soaked my shirt. It hit me in the face. I dropped to my knees. I tried to find the shut-off valve behind the toilet near the baseboard. The floor was instantly soaked. My pants were wet. I grabbed the metal oval handle of the shut-off valve. I tried to turn it to the right. It was stiff. It hadn't been turned in years. I grunted and twisted it. My hands were wet and slippery. I couldn't get a grip. Water was raining down on my head from the ceiling. The bath mat was fully submerged. There was a knock on the door. Oliver. It was Timothy. "Everything okay in there, man?" I froze. I was kneeling in an inch of water. My ironed shirt was clinging to my chest. I sounded like I was drowning. "Yeah," I yelled. My voice cracked. "Just washing my hands." Water continued to spray over my shoulder. The door handle jiggled. "It is locked," Timothy said. "Water is coming out from under the door." I closed my eyes. I accepted my fate. I reached up and unlocked the door. Timothy pushed it open. He stood in the doorway. He took in the scene, the geyser, the flooded floor, me on my knees soaking wet. He did not laugh. He did not yell. He assessed the situation. He stepped into the puddle in his socks. He reached down behind the toilet. He grabbed the shut-off valve. He didn't even strain. He just turned it. The water stopped spraying. The hiss died away. The room was silent except for the dripping from the ceiling. "Old parts," he said softly. "It happens." He reached over to the towel rack. He grabbed a thick gray bath towel. He handed it to me. I took it. I stood up. My shoes made a squelching sound. I wiped my face. Miranda appeared behind him in the hallway. She gasped. "Oh my God, Oliver, what happened?" she asked. "I broke the toilet," I whispered. "I just tried to fix the chain, and I broke the whole thing." Timothy waved his hand. "It is fine," he said. "Building maintenance is supposed to replace these valves anyway. I will grab a mop." He left the bathroom. Miranda handed me another towel. She patted my wet shoulder. "Why were you fixing his toilet, Oliver?" she asked. I looked at her. I had no answer. I couldn't say because he fixed my skillet. I just looked at the wet floor. Timothy came back with a mop and a bucket. He started cleaning. I tried to help. He told me to go sit on the couch and dry off. He gave me a pair of gray sweatpants and a clean hoodie. It was his hoodie. It smelled like cedar. It was too big for me. The sleeves went past my knuckles. I sat on his leather couch, holding a mug of tea Miranda made me. I watched Timothy mop up my failure. We left 20 minutes later. I insisted on paying for the broken part. Timothy said no. I said yes. I raised my voice slightly. "I will buy the part, Timothy," I said. "It was my fault. I am paying for it." He looked at me and nodded slowly. "All right, man," he said. "The valve is a specific size for these old condo units. You have to go to Franklin County Pipe and Valve. It is out by the highway." I nodded furiously. "I will go Monday after school," I said. "I will get it." I drove home in silence. Miranda held my hand in the car. "You don't have to be so intense about it, Oliver," she said. "He is not mad." "I am not intense," I said defensively. My voice cracked again. Monday came. I left the middle school at 3:30. I drove my Focus out to the highway. I found Franklin County Pipe and Valve. It was a huge metal warehouse in an industrial park. I walked inside. It smelled like rubber and dust. There were men in heavy work boots carrying pipes. I walked up to the counter. The guy behind the counter was wearing a backwards hat. His name tag said, Lawson. "What do you need, buddy?" Lawson asked. "I need a toilet fill valve," I said. Lawson chewed on a toothpick. "What size flange?" he asked. I stared at him. "Just a normal one," I said. "For a condo toilet." Lawson stopped chewing. "Buddy, there are 50 types of valves in that aisle. I need a diameter. I need a brand." "I don't have that," I said. I was starting to sweat. I patted my pockets. I realized I didn't even take a picture of the broken toilet. Lawson sighed. "Go figure it out and come back," he said. He turned around and started sorting invoices. I walked out of the store. I stood in the parking lot. The sun was beating down on the asphalt. I pulled out my phone. I had to text Timothy. I typed out the message. "Hey man at the store, what size is the valve?" I hit send. I leaned against the hood of my car. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Timothy. "Don't worry about it, man. I can come down there." I texted back immediately. "No, I am already here. Just tell me the size." Timothy replied, "It is tricky to explain. I will be there in 20 minutes. I groaned. I kicked the tire of my Ford Focus. I got in the driver's seat to wait. I turned the key to listen to the radio. Nothing happened. I turned it again. A rapid clicking noise. My battery was dead. I had left the headlights on when I parked in a panic. I put my head on the steering wheel. I sat there for 20 minutes. A white truck pulled up next to my car. Timothy got out. He was wearing scrubs from his physical therapy clinic. He walked over to my window. I rolled it down manually. "Hey man," he said, "did you leave your lights on?" I nodded. "I am a child," I said quietly. "I am an actual infant." Timothy laughed softly. "No, you are just having a bad week," he said. He walked into the warehouse. He came out 5 minutes later carrying a small cardboard box. He had the part. He walked over to his truck. He pulled out jumper cables. He hooked them up to my battery. He stood next to my open hood. We stood there in the parking lot while the battery charged. The highway traffic rushed by. "Why do you do it?" I asked. I blurted it out. Timothy looked at me. "Do what he asked. Fix everything," I said. "My squeaky cabinet, my garage, my cast iron skillet. Why do you have to be so good at everything?" Timothy wiped his hands on his scrubs. He looked down at the jumper cables. "My dad was a mess," he said quietly. "He drank a lot. He never fixed anything around the house. Doors wouldn't shut, windows leaked, heating was always busted. I grew up in a place where nothing worked. I hated that feeling. The feeling that everything is falling apart and nobody cares." He looked at me. "I just like fixing things," he said. "It makes me feel calm. I am not trying to step on your toes, Oliver. Miranda is my friend. You are her guy. I just saw a loose hinge and I fixed it. I am sorry if I crossed a line." I stood there. The traffic roared behind us. I felt an immense, crushing weight of stupidity fall on my shoulders. I had been fighting a war by myself, against a guy who just wanted doors to close properly. "I am sorry I flooded your bathroom," I said. Timothy smiled. "It was a little funny," he admitted. "You looked like you were wrestling a shark." I laughed. It was a real laugh. My battery cranked. The engine turned over. I unhooked the cables. "Let me buy you lunch," I said. We went to a diner down the street. We sat in a vinyl booth. We ordered cheeseburgers. We talked about normal things. He told me about his job. I told him about how Patrick, the gym teacher, is a sociopath. He agreed. I drove home later that afternoon. I walked through the front door. Miranda was sitting on the couch. She was folded under a yellow knit blanket. She looked up from her phone. "Did you get the part?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Timothy and I got it sorted." I took my keys out of my pocket. I tossed them on the kitchen counter. They landed next to a stack of mail and a plastic Tupperware container. Miranda smiled. "That is good," she said. "Oh hey, Timothy wants to come over Sunday. He said he can help us redo the shower grout." I looked at the kitchen. I looked at the cabinet that no longer squeaked. I looked at the stove where the gleaming cast iron skillet sat. I took a deep breath. I nodded. "That sounds great," I said. I walked into the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I grabbed a bottle of water. I am still wearing his gray hoodie. It is very comfortable. I have accepted my place in the hierarchy.